My beloved child, stop scrolling for a moment. Something has shifted in the unseen places around your connection, and before you dismiss this as another passing message, listen carefully. What you are about to hear was meant to find you at a very particular moment, because while you have been wondering what your soulmate is thinking, they have quietly made a decision about you. They did not announce it. They did not tell their family. They did not tell their closest friend. They did not even tell the person who normally knows everything about them. They made this decision alone. And my beloved child, the reason they kept it secret is more emotional than you realize. There was a moment recently when your soulmate became completely still. No distractions, no conversations, no opinions from other people, just them, their thoughts, and the memory of you. Something happened that caused them to look at the past differently. A memory returned, a feeling they had buried came back, and suddenly, the story they had been telling themselves about you no longer felt complete. They had spent time convincing themselves that distance was necessary. They had told themselves that silence was safer. They had tried to accept the idea that perhaps the connection belonged to another chapter of their life, but something inside them refused to agree, and that night, instead of asking someone else what they should do, they made a decision. A private decision, a life-changing decision, a decision that could eventually affect both of your lives. But there is something you need to understand before I reveal what it was. Your soulmate did not make this decision because someone pressured them. They did not make it because someone told them what to do. For perhaps the first time in a long time, they made a choice without allowing anyone else to influence their heart. That is why they told nobody. They knew that if they shared it too soon, someone might try to change their mind. Someone might question them. Someone might remind them of the past. Someone might bring up the reasons they originally walked away. So they kept quiet. They protected the decision before revealing it, and this is where the story becomes deeply personal, because the decision was not simply about contacting you, it was about changing the way they were going to approach you. Your soulmate has realized that whatever happens next cannot happen the way it happened before. They cannot allow other people's opinions to stand between you again. They cannot keep expecting you to understand silence. They cannot keep hiding behind uncertainty. And they cannot continue pretending that the connection meant nothing simply because admitting that it mattered would force them to confront everything they have avoided. Something inside them has reached its limit. Perhaps you have sensed this. Perhaps you have felt a strange emotional pull lately. Perhaps certain memories have suddenly become vivid. Perhaps you have been waking up thinking about them for no obvious reason. Perhaps you have felt that something was changing even though nothing visible has happened. Do not mistake the absence of visible movement for the absence of movement altogether. Some of the biggest decisions are made in silence. A person can change the direction of their entire life before anyone around them notices, and that is what your soulmate has begun to do. They have started changing direction. But why? Why now? Why after all this time? Why would someone who seemed determined to remain distant suddenly make a private decision concerning you? Because something they believed was finished has started asking for another look. They remembered something you said, not something dramatic, not some grand declaration, something simple. something ordinary that meant nothing to them at the time, but now it means everything. Maybe it was the way you told them you would never force them to stay. Maybe it was the way you looked at them when you knew they were afraid. Maybe it was a message they saved. Maybe it was a promise they made and never kept. Maybe it was a moment when you walked away without begging them to follow. Whatever it was, that memory returned with unusual strength, and your soulmate began asking a question they had avoided for too long. What if I misunderstood everything? That question is powerful, because once a person begins questioning the story that kept them away, the walls built around their heart begin to weaken. Your soulmate may have believed that you were the reason things became complicated. They may have believed you had moved on. They may have believed the timing was wrong. They may have believed that too much had happened. But now they are questioning those beliefs, not because someone forced them to, because something inside them no longer accepts the old explanation. There is a difference between forgetting someone and learning to live without speaking about them. Your soulmate may have become very good at the second. They learned how to function. They learned how to smile. They learned how to keep busy. They learned how to answer questions without revealing what was really happening inside. People around them may have assumed they were fine. They may have assumed the chapter was closed. They may have even congratulated your soulmate for moving forward. But your soulmate knew the truth. A part of them never completely moved forward. A part of them remained standing at the moment everything changed, and recently, that part of them woke up, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, like a door opening in a room they had forgotten existed. They began remembering you without trying. They started wondering how you were doing. They wondered whether you still thought about them. They wondered whether you hated them. They wondered whether they had waited too long. And then came the thought that frightened them most. What if they are still waiting for me? That thought stayed with them. They could not simply dismiss it. So they did something they had not done in a long time. They searched for you. Maybe they looked through old messages. Maybe they checked something they had promised themselves they would never check again. Maybe they found an old photograph. Maybe they saw something that reminded them of you unexpectedly. Whatever happened, it created an emotional reaction they could not hide from themselves. They realized that the feelings they thought were gone were not gone. They had simply been buried beneath years of fear, pride, confusion, and silence. And then they made the decision. But here is the part one want you to hear carefully. The decision was not, I will wait and see what happens. It was more deliberate than that. Your soulmate decided that they would no longer allow fear to make decisions for them. That is the life-changing part. They may not have decided exactly how the story will end. They may not know whether you will accept them. They may not know whether circumstances will make things easy. But they have decided that they will no longer remain passive. They want to do something. They want to move. They want to know the truth directly from you rather than through assumptions, memories, or other people. And they are keeping that intention private because they know how vulnerable it makes them. Imagine carrying a decision like that inside your chest, wanting to reach toward someone while knowing you might discover that the door has already closed, wanting to apologize while fearing you have no right to ask for another chance, wanting to say, I never stopped caring, While knowing the other person may have learned how to live without you, that is the emotional battle your soulmate is facing. And there is another layer. They are not only afraid of your response. They are afraid of their own emotions, because they know that if they speak to you, everything they have carefully controlled may come rushing back: the memories, the tenderness, the regret, the attraction, the unanswered questions, the possibility. They know that one honest conversation could change everything, and perhaps that is exactly why they are considering it. Because sometimes the heart becomes exhausted from pretending not to know what it knows. Your soulmate knows something. They know you mattered. They know the connection was real to them. They know there were choices they made out of fear. They know there are things they never explained. And they know that if they continue saying nothing, they may eventually regret the silence more than they fear the conversation. That realization is powerful, because regret is beginning to compete with fear, and fear has controlled this story for a long time. But now something else is becoming stronger: courage. Not perfect courage, not fearless courage, the trembling kind, the kind that says, "I am terrified, but I cannot keep running." That is the courage beginning to rise inside your soulmate. And my beloved child, there is a reason they have not told anyone. They know people would ask questions. They know someone would say, "Are you sure?" Someone might say, "Why go back?" Someone might remind them of everything that went wrong. Someone might tell them to protect themselves. Someone might even say that you have probably changed. But your soulmate does not want another person's interpretation of you. That is an enormous difference. They are not trying to return to an old fantasy. They are considering meeting the real you as you are now. They want to know what happened to your heart. They want to know what happened in your life. They want to know whether the person they remember still exists beneath everything time has changed. And somewhere deep inside, they are wondering whether you have been asking the same questions. That thought has been keeping them awake, because there is one thing your soulmate never fully accepted. They never accepted that the connection was meaningless. They may have tried to convince themselves. They may have told others they were over it. But privately, they knew there was unfinished business, and unfinished business has a way of returning. Not always as a relationship, sometimes as a conversation, sometimes as an apology, sometimes as closure, sometimes as a second chance, but it returns because the heart refuses to remain permanently confused. Your soulmate has reached that point. They want clarity, and perhaps for the first time, they are willing to risk discomfort to get it. There was a particular moment when they made this decision. It may have been after seeing something connected to you. It may have been after hearing your name. It may have been during a quiet moment when nobody was watching. They stopped, they thought about you, and they realized something that surprised them. They were not angry anymore. That mattered. For a long time, anger may have protected them. Anger allowed them to avoid vulnerability. It was easier to say, it was their fault. Easier to say, it was never going to work. Easier to say, I do not care. But when the anger faded, something remained: love, or at least the memory of a love that had never been fully resolved, and that frightened them. because you cannot easily move on from something you no longer hate. You have to face what remains. That is what they are doing, facing it, and as they faced it, they made a promise to themselves. They promised that if they ever approached you again, they would not come with games, no manipulation, no testing, no pretending to be indifferent, no sending confusing signals just to see whether you still care. They would come honestly. That is the decision. They have decided that if they reach out, they will tell you something they have been too proud to say. They will acknowledge that they were afraid. They will acknowledge that they made mistakes. They will acknowledge that there were moments when they should have spoken and did not, but even this is not the deepest part, because your soulmate has also decided something about the people around them. They have decided to stop discussing your connection with people who do not understand it. They have decided that certain boundaries must be created. Someone who previously had influence over their choices may no longer have the same access. Someone who always gave advice may suddenly notice that your soulmate is no longer asking. Someone who expected to be informed may discover that they are being kept outside the conversation. This is why the decision has remained secret. Your soulmate is protecting it from interference. They do not want anyone to know until they are ready. And that may be one of the strongest signs of change. Before, they allowed too many voices into their heart. Now they are beginning to listen to their own. But there is still a question. What exactly are they planning to do? Are they going to contact you? Are they going to ask to meet? Are they going to send an apology? Are they going to finally tell you what really happened? The answer is closer than you think, but it is not as simple as a message saying, "I miss you." Your soulmate knows that would not be enough. Too much has happened. Too much silence has passed. Too many questions remain. They are thinking about a conversation that goes deeper, a conversation where they finally explain why they disappeared, a conversation where they tell you what they believed at the time, a conversation where they reveal who influenced them, a conversation where they admit what they were too afraid to admit. And there is one specific truth they have been rehearsing in their mind. They are afraid to say it, but they know they eventually must, because without saying it, they cannot honestly ask you for another chance. That truth is simple: I never stopped caring about you. Those words may sound small, but to someone who has spent a long time pretending otherwise, they are enormous. They carry years of contradiction, years of silence, years of pride, years of memories. And if your soulmate says those words to you, they will not simply be admitting love. They will be admitting that the story they presented to the world was not the whole truth. That is why this decision is so important. It is not just about coming closer to you. It is about becoming honest with themselves. And that is where transformation begins. But my beloved child, do not mistake this message for a command to wait indefinitely. You are not being asked to freeze your life. You are not being asked to reject every opportunity because of a promise that has not yet been spoken. Live, grow, heal. Become the version of yourself that no longer needs another person's decision to validate your worth. Because if your soulmate does return, you want to meet them from strength, not desperation. You want to be able to listen without losing yourself. You want to be able to forgive without forgetting your boundaries. You want to be able to love without abandoning your peace. and if this connection is meant to be restored, it must meet you there, at a healthier place, a more honest place, a place where neither of you needs to hide. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that too. They are realizing that returning is not enough. They must return differently. They must communicate differently. They must choose differently. And that is why the decision they made in silence matters. It was not simply, I want them back. It was, if I go back, I will not repeat the same pattern. That is a much deeper decision, but something happened after they made it, something unexpected. They received a reminder of the past. And this reminder contained information they did not know. It showed them that there may have been another reason the two of you were separated, a reason involving someone they trusted, a reason that could explain why the timing always seemed so strangely wrong, a reason that could explain why you and your soulmate kept missing each other by moments, days, or decisions. And when your soulmate discovered this detail, they did not become angry first. They became quiet, because suddenly they realized that they may have spent all this time blaming the wrong person. They began looking at an old event, an old conversation, an old message, and something did not add up. One detail was missing. One person had never been questioned, one version of the story had never been challenged, and now your soulmate is preparing to challenge it, privately, carefully, without telling anyone, because they know that if the truth is what they suspect, then the decision they made about you is only the beginning. There is another decision waiting behind it. A decision about whether they are finally willing to confront the person who helped shape the separation, and that confrontation could reveal something neither of you expected, because the person your soulmate trusted may know exactly why the two of you were kept apart. They may know what was said, they may know what was hidden, and they may have been waiting for the right moment to speak. Your soulmate has not confronted them yet, but they have already decided that they will. That is the part nobody knows. That is the secret decision, and before they make that confrontation, your soulmate is doing one final thing. They are going back through the past, looking at old conversations, reconsidering old memories, searching for the moment when everything changed. And they have just found something. You once said, something they misunderstood, something that was never meant to hurt them, something that, when seen through the truth they now possess, carries an entirely different meaning. Your soulmate read it again, and this time, they cried, not because they were broken, because they finally understood what you were trying to say, they finally understood why you walked away, they finally understood why you became silent, and then they made the decision that could change the entire direction of this story. They reached for their phone, they opened your name, their finger hovered over the screen. For several seconds, they did nothing. Then they began typing, but just before they pressed send, someone called them, and the name on that screen was the one person they never expected to hear from again, the person who knows what really happened. The person who could either confirm everything your soulmate has begun to suspect, or destroy the story they have been building in their heart. Your soulmate answered, and what they heard on the other end of that call made them sit down, because the caller did not begin with an apology. They began with your name, and then they said 4 words that your soulmate had been waiting years to hear. I need to tell you.